So Mike Reitz is my colleague from Michigan. He is Executive Vice President of the Mackinac Center. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
what is Mackinac, by the way?
Mackinac Center is...
Let me take a shot at that.
Okay, go ahead.
It wants to be the Independence Institute, but it just can't do it.
That's right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, we're a think tank in Michigan. We work on state issues, much like you do, and we hope to do it as well as you do someday.
You just keep on practicing. That'll be good. All right. Mackinac has been really involved in the Janus decision and helping teachers and other government employees understand their new rights under this decision.
Yeah.
First of all, what is a Janus and why do we care?
Yeah. So Janus, the Janus case is named after a guy named Mark Janus, who was a public employee out of the state of Illinois.
It's not a cross-dresser. It's not somebody who's gender fluid.
Right. It's
his name is not Janus.
Right. It's not a Greek god,
Right.
which is the same spelling. Yep. The god of beginnings and endings, which is
there's some poetry there.
Right. So Mark did not want to pay his union to hold views that were abhorrent to him and counter to his political beliefs. So
In what state was this?
This was in the state of Illinois. So with the help of the Illinois Policy Institute and their law firm, the Liberty Justice Center and the National Right to Work, he sued. And his case eventually got to the Supreme Court. And the court had a very simple question before it. It was, should Mark be required to pay the union as a condition of holding his job with the state of Illinois? And after 40 years of answering that question one way, the U.S. Supreme Court said, you know what, this actually is a violation of the First Amendment, and they ruled in Mark's favor.
Basically, to force this association, which is, in order to have my job as a teacher, I have to be a member of this private organization, the union.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be like, I will hire you here, but you have to be a member of the NRA.
Sure.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, or you're welcome to open your business in our town, but we require you to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce. You know that.
Yeah. So under what part of the Constitution did they find it unconstitutional?
They looked at it under the First Amendment with the freedom of association, and they said, you know, there is the right to associate. So if people want to join a union or the NRA or the Chamber of Commerce, they should be free to do that. But if they don't want to join, there's also this corollary right of non-association.
Basically, if there's a right to association, there must be a right to not associate.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Was any of it about free speech? In other words, when you're forced to give money to a union, their primary purpose is political. It is to help candidates. It's about speech to help that candidate win. Did that come up at all? I was curious.
You know, it really did. And the court actually said, look, at least for government unions who advocate for growth in government and growth in the scope of government and are negotiating with public bodies, the Supreme Court said that's all political. Everything that those unions do is a political act because they are attempting to affect the policy making and the spending decisions of political bodies. So the Supreme Court said every dollar a government union collects and spends is essentially a political dollar, and that implicates the freedom of speech.
Let me take their side for a second and say, no, not every dollar we collect from you guys is for politics. You know, we do services for you. We negotiate on your behalf for our collective bargaining agreement. We provide insurance for liability and things like that. So how could 100% of this be for politics?
Well, and the court looked at that and said, look, everything you do is for the purpose of influencing government. And not only are you acting as like a lobbying association, like the Chamber of Commerce might, but there are actual laws where if a union represents a teacher in a school district, the union represents all the teachers. And not only do they represent them and have kind of a monopoly representation, but the school district is obligated to work with the union. It's built into the law. And so there's this special privilege that the unions have. Actually, Justice Scalia, before he died about 10 years ago, said it's an extraordinary benefit that we give unions, at least in the government sector, where they get to elect the people who are going to negotiate against them. They get to use public dollars in some of this, the dollars that they collect. They're required, teachers are required to pay that, and public employees who have a government union representing them have to accept the terms and conditions that the unions offer. It's an extraordinary privilege.
All right, so we got this incredible ruling, the Janus decision, as it's called, and it means now if you work for the government, you cannot be required to join the union or be fired. Colorado is not a right-to-work state, but by law in government, you don't have to join a union, and we don't have as many private sector unions, so it really it's not in effect here as much. But still, to get out of a union is ridiculous. We have 128 school districts, many of them are unionized, and by law, they have to allow union members to leave. But they do these little things called windows. And the windows are a week or 2 weeks, and you have to quit then. Imagine you're a member of a bank or your credit union, and you want to no longer be a member of the credit union. Well, sorry, you got to do that between October 3rd and October 7th.
Right.
And in order to do it, you have to come to the union office. So many of these places, in order to get out of the union, you got to know when the window is. You got to go down to the union office where you're going to be pressured in order to stay. And people are like, I don't need that bullying in my life.
Yeah, we saw the same thing in Michigan, and they tried other things as well. So you could get out in a 1-month period if you were a teacher. And,
1 month? That's huge compared to what we
generous compared to Colorado. But then
I got to tell you, we had one woman who wanted to get out of the school union.
Yeah.
And they kept bullying her, and she would go down to the union office, and they bully her, and so she went with her husband, who was a state legislator. And when the state legislator showed up and said, the law is, my wife doesn't have to stay, they of course,
right,
and they did this.
Yeah.
He gave her a great quote when they were on this House floor. He said, the problem is that I can't marry everybody who wants to leave the union and go down with them.
Right.
And it is an issue.
It really is. And in our state, we had the situation where you could mail your resignation form into the union, but year over year, they would change the P.O. box. So it would bounce back.
And you had to do it every year.
And you had to do it every year to take advantage of some of the rights.
Imagine being a member of even the NRA, and you quit and you say, I'm no longer a member. Well, we're going to re-enroll you every year
right.
from now on and bill you for it, whether you want it or not.
So all of this trouble after the right to work law was enacted in Michigan told us that we had to change our tactics and really become kind of a civil rights education association or organization for teachers in Michigan. So we started a whole public awareness campaign around you have a right to get out of your union. You have to take a couple of steps to do it. If they tell you you're not allowed, no, it's actually okay. And we took thousands of calls from teachers over a couple of years who were running into trouble with their union. But eventually we saw the tide turn where in that first year after right to work went into effect, 1% got out. Now we're 6 years out, and the union is down about 32% of its members.
Wow.
So a massive shift in behavior among the teachers just because the path is being cleared.
Are you doing this purely for political reasons? Because the union in any state, the teachers union especially, is an 800-pound gorilla in the legislature. And if you have taken away a third of their resources, you're just doing this for pure partisan politics so that they can't elect as many Democrats.
I think it's all about the policy. I think it's all about making sure that the policy, the ideas that win in Lansing or here in Denver are being pushed and supported by people because they actually want those things. So in Michigan, if you have 100,000 teachers who are paying into a union, whether they want to or not, and in fact against their will, it distorts the political landscape, it distorts the policy landscape. And so for us, this is all about, number one, the liberty of the individual, and then also making sure that the ideas that we advocate for have a fair chance of being heard in Lansing, and that the organizations that have political influence have that influence kind of in balance with what they're able to recruit. So if the union wants to go out and attract 100,000 members to its cause, great. That's something we will navigate. But to pass a law that says, hey, you have no choice and you actually have to pay into this system, we find that unacceptable.
You've expanded outside of Michigan because this message is important, and you've partnered with lots of organizations. Yep. We work with you guys all the time in other states because you want to make sure people understand this, that they have a right to get out and stay out.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because there's so many government workers. How do you do it?
Yeah, so this came as the Janus case was coming to the Supreme Court. So this would have been like 2016 or 17. We realized, oh wow, what we've learned in Michigan actually could be relevant for the entire country, because it's not enough just to open a door. You actually have to shine the lights on that door and then help people walk out of it from time to time. And so we thought we really have an opportunity here to educate workers all around the country. So we began talking to organizations all around the country, national groups in DC, state-based organizations, C3s, C4s, anyone who would take our calls. We started talking and planning with a lot of those groups about what do we do when the Janus case comes out, if it comes out in a way that's favorable to us. So June 28, 2018, the Supreme Court announces its decision. And they usually announce their decisions at about 10 o'clock in the morning. So this one came out at 10:04. We already had the email.
I love that you know that.
Oh yeah, we had the email ready to go. So all we had to do was just hit send, and the email went out to hundreds of thousands of public employees around the country, saying, hey, the Supreme Court has ruled you have a new First Amendment right. You can take advantage of this right, and if you have problems, let us know. And so we set up a website with information about this, so anyone from anywhere in the country can go and find.
What is that website?
mypaymysay.com.
mypaymysay.com.
Yep. And it tells people, here's some information about what the Supreme Court has done. Here's how you get out if you want to. Here's a hotline number in case you run into trouble. And we've got a call center set up so that if people have questions about how their union is treating them, they can call in. We do a lot of social media advertising because we find that teachers especially are very much on Facebook compared to any other social media platform. And then we do some of the old school campaign tactics that people think of when they think of how do you get a message out. We send out mailers, we put up information through the local media, and then we even sometimes knock on doors if we think that would be helpful.
And so you've been doing this now for
about 2 years. Yep.
33% drop nationwide? I doubt it, but are you seeing numbers?
So in Michigan, the first year after Right to Work went into effect, we saw 1% get out. And as we looked around the country, we thought, okay, well, a national play with a lot of different groups, not just the Mackanic Center, maybe a 3% exit from the union in that first year would make sense, because it's going to take time for the word to get out. Today, we're about 16 months out from the Janus ruling, and the unions have lost about 10% of their members all across the country.
Wow. And for those people who think, well, but I love my union, I think the real point is, great. Love your union.
Yeah,
we're telling you not.
in.
But apparently 10% don't love your union.
Yeah.
And if they want to get out, they should have the freedom to get out, and they do have the freedom to get out. And it's always been my theme on this, which is one side wants to convince people, you should give up smoking, you should stop driving an SUV, you should stop eating meat, you should be a member of the union. And then there's a side that doesn't want to convince us, they need to coerce us. By taking away choices because they know what's right for us. And it's so remarkably insulting. And it also shows the weakness. You don't need to convince me not to smoke, or coerce me. I've made the decision. I've convinced myself. Convince me. And that's what the war of ideas is all about. the unions don't want to play that war of ideas.
No, and even in this particular round of the fight, they're not playing that way. So the unions could see the writing on the wall. They knew the Supreme Court was likely to rule against them in the Janus case, and so they began going around to states all around the country, and where Democrats controlled the state legislature, they would convince the state to adopt policies that would sort of circumvent or blunt the impact of the Janus ruling.
Like what?
So in California, New Jersey, and other states, kind of deep blue states, one of the things they do is they adopt the window restriction. So you can get out anytime you want as long as it's within this window. In New Jersey, it's really pernicious because it says it's a 10-day window, and it's keyed on the anniversary of the day you started your job. Now,
So I don't remember when I started my job.
who does? Right? Yeah, maybe teachers, if you
Right.
started in August before a school year, you might be able to nail that down. So we're suing in New Jersey to get rid of that law. There's another one, I think it's in California, that essentially sets up like a timeshare presentation for new teachers and new employees coming in.
Right.
Like, well, you don't have to join the union, but you do have to sit through this
But also,
very
on
aggressive.
your first day of work, you are signing papers,
Yep.
Insurance forms and emergency contacts and this waiver and that waiver and this non-disclosure and here's how you get into the union and a lot of teachers do it because they're young and no, they're not going to. I'm not signing this
Right.
because you want to impress your bosses.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, people want to find out more about this.
Yes.
Where?
The Mackinac Center, it's mackinac.org, or they can go to mypaymysay.com and they can read about the case there.
Mike, always fun.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah.